Welcome to another episode of Tales from the Tables with your host, Rob Bradley,
John Charles Ciccarelli,
James Burrows,
and Damien Hallwood.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Table. I am joined this week only by Damien and JC. We are once again without our glorious leader, Rob.
Indeed. That makes the third week running?
Yeah.
We miss you, Rob. He might not be real. We don't know. No, he's real. He's editing the podcast. So, yes. You are missed, our fearless leader.
But he should we're at Mass Effect 3 by the end of this week.
Exactly. That's right.
We just need to make...
next week is Andromeda. And,
I was going to say we need to make the collective decision whether he needs to play Andromeda or not.
I never finished. I don't know what you guys think.
I never finished either. But I don't know if I was just turned off by the fact that it wasn't part of the original Mass Effect trilogy, and I was like, I'm not really.
I actually found the gameplay really fun. It was the story that was a bit lacking for me, but people kept swearing up and down that the ending was worth it. I just never got around to it.
Yeah, but now knowing that the ending, while it may be good, is not going anywhere, because Mass Effect 4 is probably going to completely ignore it and follow on from 3.
Was the ending setting something up for?
Yeah, I think
for a sequel to Andromeda.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Which is a bold strategy, really.
Pretty certain they're not gonna touch that, because I think the teaser that they released a long time ago now was it teased Liara, it teased the N7, it teased all original trilogy stuff. So
how many years ago was that at this point?
Maybe
that was a while back,
3 or 4 at this point. In fact, maybe even longer. It's been a lot of years.
Longer.
It's been a few years.
Pre-pandemic.
It could have been. I was just thinking that it could have been pre-pandemic.
I mean, somehow still more recent than the Elder Scrolls last teaser that was released 6 or 7 years ago.
Unsurprisingly, which, by the way, is still better than the last teaser that we got for The Winds of Winter by George R.R. Martin.
Oh, God,
or The Doors of Stone by Patrick Rothfuss, which will never happen at this point.
I follow George is not a blog, and every time he posts something, I get excited, and I read too much into it. I'm like, it's gonna any day now. It's probably this year, definitely this year. And then the year passes, and I'm like, I was an idiot.
That's the title of our episode, and we're still waiting.
Yeah,
we will be touching on an author in today's news segment.
That's true, and one that we won't have to wait for books for, because he puts them out at a rate of knots.
Brandon Sanderson, probably. I'm assuming because he's the only one I know who actually produces books on time.
Yeah, well, me and David were talking before this. It's basically him and Stephen King just absolutely like putting them out at pace.
I actually saw it. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there is an interview between George R.R. Martin and Stephen King where he outright says to him, like, how the hell do you write books so fast?
I would love to hear King's response to that. He's like, I don't mess around.
Cocaine.
Yeah,
it
was
cocaine.
Also cocaine.
It's
Maine. So.
He did not say that White Lines was the way forward, but he did say that he consistently ensures that he writes a certain number of pages. I can't remember whether it was a day or a week, or I think it was a day, but he just consistently writes a set number of pages. Whether they end up being final or not, he consistently writes pages.
There you go.
Greetings, fellow adventurers. Are you tired of using subpar tables for your epic tabletop quests?
Absolutely. We need something that matches the grandeur of our adventures.
Well, fear not, dear listeners. Allow us to introduce to you Robert Rose Carpentry. Established for 10 years as a specialist in crafting bespoke gaming tables that are as functional as they are beautiful.
Built to precision, with custom add-ons and exclusive features. 100% sustainable and environmentally friendly. Every inch of their gaming tables are made from reclaimed wood, then crafted into a solid masterpiece that will last aeons.
And here's the best part. As proud sponsors of Tales from the Tables, Robert Rose Carpentry are offering an exclusive 10% discount to all our listeners.
Imagine the thrill of transforming your dining table into a custom-built gaming experience for you, your friends, and your family to enjoy time and time again.
So don't wait any longer. Head over to www.robertrosecarpentry.com/Tales from the Tables and use the code ROLLDARK10 to claim your discount at checkout.
Craftsmanship, adventure, and savings. What more could you ask for? Thanks to Robert Rose Carpentry for supporting our podcast and enhancing our gaming experiences.
Absolutely. Now let's roll those dice and weave some epic tales.
Indeed. Until the next time, adventurers.
Which I feel like is
listen, not to say that any process, right, and not to say that any process is the right process, but that feels like a goal that any creative should have. Like, always do X amount of this every day, right? But everybody works differently. I'm sure. Yeah. Just right. Just no, I'm kidding.
Putting
I know
ideas down,
there's no one way. There's no set way. But hey, speaking of writing or amazing writing and things we want to see in TTRPGs, I have been playing the 2000, I think it was a 19 sleeper hit, Disco Elysium. Have you guys ever played this game?
I have not played. So many people have recommended Disco Elysium to me, and it's on the list.
It is fantastically good. I will struggle to summarize it here on the podcast in any short order because it's a lot of strange things. I will say it would make a great TTRPG because it was based and effectively is a TTRPG. Just instead of tabletop, it's its own system, but you are rolling dice throughout. It's a 2d6 system. And it was originally conceived as a tabletop game, but then people were like, well, we feel like video games would reach a wider audience. And so they made the transition to a studio. But there is a lot of love to TTRPGs in the game itself, because you can even meet a character that's kind of hidden away working in a, well, bit of a spoiler for those of you who care for this thing, but you can find a novelty dice maker who makes polyhedral dice hidden up in one sort of abandoned tenement in this area that's thought to be cursed. And she's the sweetest person. And she's like, oh, hello, would you like to order some dice from me? I can make you any kinds. And I ordered a set of amber dice that have little insects trapped inside them, like it was Jurassic Park. It felt great. It was wonderful. But yeah, for the quick pitch to you gents, because and everybody else who might be interested, Disco Elysium is a narrative focused game where you play effectively a detective that wakes up from a 3-day bender with absolute amnesia. He doesn't remember his name. He doesn't remember his profession. He doesn't remember basic concepts. Like, he understands language, but there are things like money, for instance, that he doesn't really know how it works, nor does he remember the world around him. So you get to sort of explore the world through his eyes and through his actions. And it's a fantasy setting, but when I say fantasy, I don't mean high fantasy. I just mean it's kind of like an alternate Earth with different names. And it's a very interesting setting that is largely inspired by a sort of post-Soviet attitude, a post-war attitude, and you play in the district of a city called Revachol that's completely run down and is barely has recovered from the war that shelled it apart. So it's kind of depressing in a way, because there's a lot of abandoned buildings, there's lots of poverty, there's a strike going on, which factors into the story. But the real hook of the game is that your brain talks to you, and your skills are represented by 24 different aspects of your mind, of your brain, of your personality, and all of them talk to you constantly throughout the game. And the checks that you make are largely passive. And as you're sort of having a conversation with an NPC, different aspects of your brain will chime in with thoughts and with things to say and analyzing the situation. So, for instance, if someone mentions drugs to you, because drugs is a big problem in this district of Revachol, the electrochemistry section of your personality will spark up being like, drugs? Oh, and it's voiced by this really deep-throated voice guy. He goes, drugs? Oh, yeah, drugs. That sounds amazing. We should get some speed, have some speed right now. And then your logic brain will chime in and be like, that doesn't sound like a good idea for a police officer trying to make a good impression. Maybe not. And at some point, they will or at various points, they will just argue with each other, and you're kind of like a bystander just reading the text as they kind of start fighting with each other. It is fabulous and fantastic and very, very deep. And turns out that he was your protagonist has gone through some trauma, which is why he was drinking so much. And at the same time, you're trying to solve a murder. So highly recommended. Very narrative, very poignant, very powerful. Definitely check it out. That was my pitch. I'll be quiet.
Nice. It's definitely on the list. Yeah. It's finding the time to commit to. I already had heard is a deep role playing game. So
it is deep. Ooh, I'm probably like 25 hours in, and I feel like I'm a little over halfway. So it's probably 20-25 hours is your halfway mark. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm off to Mexico on my holidays in the coming weeks, and I need something to do, and it's available on Switch. So
it is for like $11.99 in the States. I don't know how much it is in the UK. It was relatively cheap. I failed to mention the reason I got into this and I picked it up is because I got a request to run a D&D one-shot set in the world of Revachol and basically in the world of Disco Elysium. So I did that, and it was fun. I hadn't finished the game, but we're effectively continuing it for a little bit. We're going to run a few sessions of it, so that's going to be nice. Fun. Yeah, that's that was cool. For one of my teens' birthdays, so it'll shout out to the Wayfinders. Thanks, guys. I'm working on the trauma, as always.
my first ever Rolldark game that I booked was based on an IP. It was based on A Nightmare Before Christmas, which was a lot of fun to play.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That sounds amazing. What was that like?
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun writing a story that sort of fit into the canon of that, but maintained the feeling of that world, the sort of dark mixed with, because obviously it needed to have Christmas in there too somehow. You couldn't ignore that completely. It was it was a lot of fun to write. I ended up going with a sort of failed experiment of a self-dependent Santa Claus that had been created as an alternative to actually stealing Christmas and stealing Santa Claus. After that debacle, they decided they'd instead create a sentient Santa Claus monstrosity that could act in their Halloween Christmas parade. But it ended up going horribly wrong, and they locked it away, and it of course escaped. And
that's cool.
That makes sense. Actually, that's really cool.
It was a lot of fun, and then I ended up having in the final fight against this monstrous Santa Claus creature. It had presents strewn about the map, which were basically, I said to the players, these function a lot like the wild magic table. You can open a present at any time, and it may be a boon or it may be a burden. That's for you to decide. But you can open any present at any time,
or a unicorn. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there was a nice, fun sort of element of chaos there, where they could just open a present and see what happened.
That seems very Nightmare Before Christmas. Yeah.
I do like a good.
Hey, if you ever run a sequel to that, and you need a resurrected Oogie Boogie, I do a great Oogie Boogie song. So
nice.
So I'll back you up.
You can't just say that, JC.
No, I'm sick today. I can't do it today. I'll remind me next week.
Oh, we will. Notes have been taken.
Great. We'll do a special one-off podcast that'll be mysteriously lost in the ether again.
Very cool.
I've done a lot of D&D one shot, specifically D&D, that have all been themed. Most of them have come from special requests, but Disco Elysium is not the first video game I've based it off of. I had a Bloodborne themed one shot at one point where they delved into Yharnam, and that was a lot of fun. I've run one for a game last year that was called Amori, which is a sort of independent game about a group of children, which was really cool, and like the psychology of a group of children. There's so many that I've run at this point. I can't even remember or keep track of all the different things I've done. I've done a Hunger Games themed one shot. I think I might have mentioned that on the podcast. And by one shot, I mean it devolved into like a 6-episode arc, because I realized it was far too ambitious to be put or kept to one.
Was it PvP?
How do you guys
or
handle one shot? No, well, yes, it was. Yeah, it was. It was the only time I really allowed for a PvP game, but it was also setting up the danger of the arena, and then the different traps. There are strange animals that were present in the arena, but they did have like a cornucopia fight, which took pretty much all of one session. The problem was I should have let it just be the players. And granted, this was kind of both my fault and the person that requested it. It should have just been the 7 players fighting against each other. Instead, there was this plan to put in 2 partners from every district, and each partner was a previous character or NPC that the party had met in their regular game. As a result, the initial fight had 24 people. And that's why this is one of the major reasons why it took 6 sessions to accomplish, because I think 4 or 5 died in the first fight, and then the rest all scattered, and then we had to keep like bouncing back between different groups, and it was chaos. If it had just been the 7, it would have been easier.
That seems like a logistical nightmare, but
it was
very fun at the same time.
Was.
Yeah,
it was.
I'm impressed
but it was also
do it and keep it going for 6
and
sessions.
it weirdly tied into, as with all things, I'm trying to create a silver thread that ties all of these very random, out of the ordinary world into the universe that we're building with the Wayfinders, where weirdly they're all connected, all these differing realities, and they're effectively treated like domains of dread. Oh, I ran one for the anime Chainsaw Man as not too long ago. Did that.
Yeah. Oh, you remember me saying about that?
It's just
I don't think I've ever been asked to run a themed game.
What would you do? What would be your first pick?
I mean, I'd love to run a theme game based on maybe The Ring. I think that would be. I'd like to maybe do a Call of Cthulhu based around The Ring or something like that.
The Ring, that sounds cool.
I think the closest I ever got was I did for Rolldark like a PvP one shot themed, sort of like Top Gun.
Not a combo I would have presumed, but still great.
No, but yeah, that was fun. I just it was just essentially a capture the flag game between two teams, and some NPCs on there. I think I had in there as well. I think it was 4 on each side, and yeah,
nice.
No, it was very fun.
I actually pulled up the list of all the different ones I've run. I'll read through them quickly. So Camp Here and There, which is effectively like a
Percy Jackson.
No, if you haven't heard it, it's really hard to describe, and it's been a while since I've listened to it. It's a podcast, but it's a sort of in-universe podcast about effectively a kids' summer camp in this mysterious area where supernatural events keep happening, but it's told through the announcement PA system of the of the camp. So it's really only like 2 or 3 characters.
Sounds really like Night Vale. Welcome to Night Vale.
In a very similar way, yes. It's very inspired by Night Vale, yeah. So there was Camp Here and There, Chainsaw Man, Disco Elysium. There is, I'm looking through the ones that I've written, so I'm trying to skip through them. Home and Gnome, that was obviously a Home Alone, and then Home Alone 2. Lord of the Rings, I did run a series of small games in the Lord of the Rings, or in the obviously in Middle Earth. That's Theros, Amori. SCP. I forgot I did that. I ran a series of one-shots in the SCP sort of mythos. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's like the deep articles on the internet that are, I think the SCP stands for Secure, Contain, Protect, but it's basically articles on all these cryptids / strange phenomena that the government has locked away.
Okay.
This is all like a it's not its own universe. This is supposedly happening in our real world, obviously.
Right, yeah.
A fantasy alternative, but still. And then the Famine Feuds, which was the Hunger Games spinoff, and then the Bloodborne thing. And there's more, but that's what I have in this list. Jesus.
Famine Feuds. That's a great name, to be fair. Like
the Famine Feuds.
Yeah. Go for the alliteration. Go for it.
Exactly. Anyway, that's that list. So what about you, Damien? What would be your IP of choice? Considering you run several different IP games already.
It's hard. It's hard to for that reason. It's hard to pin one down because if we're talking about an IP that I would use D&D for that doesn't already exist somewhere else, which is a smaller list these days, I mean, you called out Bloodborne. Bloodborne is such a rich and evocative world.
Yeah.
That would be a lot of fun to run a game in that world if you can pass out the lore, which is extensive and well hidden. Yeah, that would be really cool. I'm trying to think if there's anything else off the top of my head that would be.
You know what would be cool? And I don't actually know if they have made its own system. I'd be surprised if they hadn't. But a Matrix RPG would be.
Ooh.
That would be that would be fun.
Be a lot of
Matrix. Fun. It would be fun because of being able to sort of play the duality between the two worlds. Yeah, that would be
right.
That would be a lot of fun, actually. We'll add it to the list.
Add it to the list.
Rob will look it up. We'll look at the IP
already.
Yeah,
if there's not a system already, though, what do you think would be a good system to run a Matrix adventure using it? I feel like, I mean, the Star Wars one, who's the company?
Like
who did the
Fantasy
Star Wars?
Flight. It was Fantasy Flight. It's Edge produces the books now.
But where you've got the light and dark points, you can flip. Maybe you could do something with that and abilities in the Matrix.
Yeah.
If you've forgotten to bring something, suddenly you have machine guns in your coat. And...
I think the thing about the Matrix is it would be, obviously, as a story, it's a lot of fun, but I feel like the gameplay of it would be very weird because you're either, in comparison, very powerful to everything around you, or you, unless you are all playing versions of the one, you're very scared and running from the agents the whole time.
I think
unless you fight against each other, which
you are right, but I think there's maybe an argument to be had there that it's no secret that many D&D campaigns don't get into high level play, and I think part of the reason is I think groups do like to play lower level play sometimes, like strip it back and not have so much going on and so many options. And the idea of in-game being able to go from super powered high level character running across walls and perhaps even flying and dodging bullets, fighting agents, all the way back to fighting for your lives aboard a Nebuchadnezzar style ship with sentinels chasing you down, which will kill you instantly. And being able to switch between the two game styles might be quite refreshing because you never feel too powerful, but you also never feel helpless.
Right.
I think it'd be cool to explore some of the fantasy elements of the Matrix, because it's hinted that there's werewolves and vampires and stuff within the Matrix because they're glitches and things like that. So,
right, interesting, yeah. Anytime you thought you saw a ghost or something like that, that's what they say, right? Yeah. Could be cool. Yeah,
a lot. I'm lucky that a lot of my favorite IPs have already been turned into RPGs. Alien, Star Trek, Terminator has got one, which I haven't looked at yet, but
that's cool.
I would like to. Aside from that, which we've already mentioned in our obligatory opening to the podcast today, a lot of my favorite IPs have already been turned into an RPG. So,
what I'm surprised doesn't have its own. Oh, sorry, James. Go ahead.
So there is an unofficial Matrix tabletop RPG, but there's not an official.
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah,
it's somewhat.
I'm really surprised that there is no, or at least to my knowledge, there is no official Elder Scrolls tabletop RPG.
There isn't. No, Modiphius has the opportunity. They've got they've got Fallout. Obviously, that's there. Right. They've got both a TTRPG and a tabletop battle game with miniatures centered around the Fallout universe, and they have a tabletop miniatures battle game centered around the Elder Scrolls. But no role-playing game.
Why is that? Something
interesting. It's an interesting thing. So if anyone was to do it, I suspect Modiphius would be the ones to do it, since they've got their foot in the door.
It would be very easy. I mean, it's ready to become. You know, you could style it in terms of the world itself. It's so similar to D&D. It's just that the lore is so deep and so rich over the course of the last 20 years plus that they've been developing this series. So more. This came out in like the early 90s, I think, was the first one. I'm just surprised that they haven't in all that time. I'm sure there's an unofficial version out there that people play, or a 5e.
There definitely will be.
Yeah. I've often thought about running it, or just in 5e, not its own system, just having an Elder Scrolls game going. But
it'd be so easy to do, right? It's just the lore, just knowing the lore. Yeah. Well, speaking of, we hinted at talking about a novelist, and we've hinted about talking now about games of other IPs being turned into RPGs. So I think that's a nice segue to the news, if you gents agree.
Yeah, segue away.
We've had a small but meaningful update on the Stormlight Archive RPG system, which I didn't know up until now. I preface this by saying I have not read the Stormlight books, so I'm not the expert on this by any means. But I didn't realize it was.
I believe I've read I think I may have read the first one. I
read the first two.
And by read, I mean I listened on Audible. So.
Right. Yeah, because the books would probably break your back because they're so thick and heavy. They're wonderful though. They're really well done, and I've always wanted to get back into it. So yeah,
they it's based on D20 system, which is interesting. What they've released, and it was released on Twitter. No, I won't say the other one. Was an example of actions that can be taken, which looks primarily in combat. There's a sort of image presenting initiative order, actions that can be taken, reactions that can be taken, Stormlight actions, Radiant Spren actions, and then spending opportunity dice, which look to be D6s that have effects based on what they roll, which will either be an effect or a complication, which is interesting. I won't go into all of it because there's actually quite a lot of actions listed, but it seems like the core philosophy behind it is having lots of meaningful options in combat. And Johnny O'Neill, who sort of released this information, stated that they've had a lot of comparisons to Pathfinder, given that it's a D20 system plus, but that where Pathfinder tends to dial up the crunch and the sort of numbers, this is intended to emphasize narrative elements more.
Okay.
The most interesting thing about this will be seeing how much it makes when it goes live on Kickstarter, which it is due to do on the 6th of August. Because...
Sorry, no, continue.
I'll just add that the reason I'm interested is because Brandon Sanderson has used Kickstarter before for his novels, and the last time he did, he made over $40 million.
Yep. Me too. I was going to say to insane effect.
Yes, and I was saying
some of the most successful projects on Kickstarter ever.
Yeah, I was saying before that one of the books I think that's included in this is a campaign setting and lore book, which just that book alone, I imagine, will bring in droves of people to this Kickstarter. Oh, yeah. There are currently over 21,000 people watching it, waiting for it to go live. And I did a quick sort of just lowball estimate of, say, £50/$dollars per person. If just those people backed it and it averaged out at 50 per person, that would be $1 million already.
Wow.
Yeah.
Or £1 million.
Well, and let's be honest, there'll be people who pay way more than that.
And there will be. Yeah, there absolutely will be.
Did you say there was 20,000 people watching
21,000 followers
21,000?
currently.
Make that 21,001, because I've notify me on launch. Beautiful.
Yeah, sorry, James, you were going to say.
No, I was going to say that, yeah, and I imagine that it will be an insanely proactive and well-funded Kickstarter, especially with the lore book. And I mean, there's already just an abundance of lore for the world already. If you give people a lore book on top of that as well, they will run with it. Yeah, it turns out The Way of Kings is the one book I have read / listened to. But I have forgotten literally everything that happens in it, as it turns out.
I remember a little bit, but I would need a refresher. It's been years.
Yeah,
for sure.
I've said before that if you want to learn the lore of a world, be it a sci-fi or a fantasy world, and there's a TTRPG for it, whether you want to play the RPG or not, the source books are a great resource for information about the world and the people and the places.
Very true. Yeah.
It's because they tend to put a lot of work into making sure that you've got all of that information in order to create worlds based on it. So there's a lot of information about the peoples and the species and the places and the technology, and all centered into this one tome for you to pour through. So they're a great resource just to learn about the setting. I've not run Star Trek nearly as much as I would like to, but I've got all the Quadrant books, I've got the Division books, I've got the Shackleton Expanse book, the Klingon-centric book, and it's all filled with Trekkers' delight of lore and knowledge about everything you could imagine for that setting.
So, in other words, listeners, what Damien is saying is, please hire him for a Star Trek game. He would.
Well, you saw that, did you? You noticed that, did you? Star Trek would be a lot of fun. They're very close to launching the second edition of the game in August as well. So I will be all over that.
All of those books again.
Well, the core book, and I've said before, the problem I'm having is they've released limited edition covers for the core book, and there's one for each of the Division colors. Yeah, in this case, original series colors. So the yellow is Command in this case, whereas it swaps for Next Generation. But yeah, I still need to decide which of those I want. But I really want the GM screen because it's got the new Constitution class from Strange New Worlds on the front of it, which is gorgeous, and then also a galaxy map in that as well, which is going up on a wall. That's going up on a wall.
That's cool.
So keep an eye out for the Stormlight RPG in early August. Any bets on how many minutes it funds in, not knowing how much they're asking for?
I will say within 24 hours for sure.
I'm going to say within 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
You think that fast?
Within 10 minutes, it will be funded.
It's that many people. I would say.
I don't know, but yes.
I'm going to be a little bit more. I'll say it'll be 3 hours. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
So we got 10 minutes. I'll go 6 hours. I'll go 6.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. It's probably going to be like 2 minutes, but we'll
yeah.
Well, actually, weirdly enough, what you were saying, Damien, about learning lore from RPG books. I've recently discovered that quite a few like more complicated board games have got like app versions for my phone and tablet that you can play like the full board game, learn all the rules, and just do that on the go. So Root has a really good one that I've been playing, so I can just play Root on my phone.
Can you play against computer? Like, can you play against NPC?
And you can play against real people as well.
Nice.
So you can like pass your phone or tablet between.
Oh no, I'm too antisocial for that.
No, but like, absolutely. I've been playing it by myself, just laid in bed. But so
that's cool.
So far, I've seen that Root and Scythe both have one, and they're both board games that I've owned, but I haven't played yet. And I was like, well, this is great because I can learn all the rules, sort of get used to the game before I play it.
I've never played it, or I played it. No, I played it once, and it was a little too overwhelming.
Yeah. That's what I heard, and I was like, I don't know if I can bring that to like a board game night and be like, right, let's all learn Root when I haven't done.
Do you know what would happen if they did that with Arkham Horror or Eldritch Horror, the board game?
Oh, it'd be insane. I
would spend all the money to buy that. I know that they did that for Elder Sign, which is called Elder Sign Omens on iOS, which is a lot of fun. Some people deride it and say it's basically Call of Cthulhu, or not Call of Cthulhu, but Arkham Horror meets Yahtzee. So it's like a light version of it. And I'm like, okay, yes, but that doesn't make it any less spooky or difficult because the odds are massively stacked against you in that game. 9 times out of 10, you are struggling to survive and usually fail.
I've played a lot of fun. Mansions of Madness. There is a Steam on Steam. I have it a sort of because I think the game it's been a long time since I've played it, but the idea is that one of you takes on a sort of pseudo GM role to play the game, and the app takes over that for you and does all that for you, so you can play as a group, and it has great theming and sound and voice recordings and things for each of the modules for the game, and it keeps updating itself with new ones. So we've played that a few times, and that's a great way to experience that game.
I would like to see more versions like these of board games that would lend itself to just being able to play, one, by yourself, and two, just as a way to learn the rules. I find that playing the game is often the best way to learn it. And if you can do that by yourself, against a computer, even if it's not overly challenging, or even if it's a little too challenging, as long as you can pick up the basic rules as you're going, that's something very helpful and probably very fun. The Root one I've been having a blast with. That's been
Dune Imperium has it.
Yeah, Fury of Dracula iOS version.
Wait, is there a Fury of Dracula?
Yes. Oh, it exists. It's $4.99 on the iOS store on the Apple store.
I think I'm spending $4.99 in a little bit then. I've played Fury of Dracula in person. It is a great game.
It is so much fun. Shout out to Nay and Leo for that. That was a blast. That's a great game. It's so beautiful. It makes a great collector's edition sort of trophy for your shelf, but I don't think it's been reproduced in years.
No,
it's almost impossible to find.
It's so difficult to find. And if you do find it, someone who's reselling it at a ridiculous
they'll grab it instantly and then sell it on eBay for. Oh, actually,
I had the same problem with the Ghostbusters board game. I never picked it up, and then it's. I think it's out of print now. I need to check, but the last time I looked, it was hard to get for a good price.
Oh, there's one on eBay for only like $99.
That's a lot of money for a board game.
We're only one story into our news segment, and JC has already spent.
Stop it!
And that's not including what he's going to put down on the Stormlight book.
Oh man!
Sorry, JC.
Oh, it's good.
Let's segue to a story that may or may not cost you some money. It's just a little upstart live streaming revolution happening over on BackerKit. Something called Moonbeam, currently funding over there. It is funded, and it's touting to be a sort of fan-created, fan-funded, 100% monetization to creators, focus on tabletop role-playing games streaming service.
Whoa. Moonbeam? Am I spending more money? All right, I'm going to go on.
Yeah.
I think
so. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. With a new moderation system called Pixis. Promises to be dynamic automated system to preemptively block messages of cyberbullying, harassment, hate speech, and toxicity. Right. So it sounds like they've got some good tech behind them. It's been funded, so it looks like it's going to happen. Obviously, take all of that with a grain of salt whenever you're looking at a thing that's been backed on anything like Kickstarter or BackerKit. But it has been funded, and it'd be interesting to see what they've got. Being that it's focused on
games as part of it.
TTRPGs.
Yeah. There's Evil Hat Productions. I recognize them. Gen Con TV, Monty Cook Games. They're all part of this. That's really cool. I'm excited for this too.
Yeah, they've got 20 plus days to go, 22 days to go. They were looking at $10,000. They've made $48,000. So it's starting to make a quick buck on that, it seems.
Very nice. So it's basically just like a community.
It seems so.
Very interesting.
It seems so.
All right. Excellent.
But it piqued my interest, given that it has a focus on being a streaming service for TTRPGs. We'll see how well that does. We'll keep an eye on that. A little upstart BackerKit system that's making its way into a very busy world. We'll see how well it does. I don't know if you're going to spend money on these either, JC. Let's see if this will pique your interest too. It's all money this week. D&D stamps. You've probably seen them. They've had a lot of advertising about them. 50th anniversary D&D stamps, which I think differ from. It says that they differ from the US ones. So I presume that previously there was a US release, and these look to be Royal Mail release in the UK. They feature artwork by Wayne Reynolds, whose artwork I like quite a bit. he of D&D fame, but as far as I know, primarily does art for Pathfinder these days. But I recognize some of the art. I can see monsters.
The Mimic looks very cool.
8 monsters and what's that? 6 player characters, it looks like. It says here it features new art from Wayne Reynolds, which is a stretch of the truth. It's a cleverly worded sentence because a lot of these pieces of artwork are classic pieces by Wayne. The Red Dragon piece is actually the front cover of the 4th edition Player's Handbook. The Displacer Beast is from the 4th edition Dungeon Master's screen, or one of them.
Right. Recognize
so, and the monster, the Beholder, I've seen before, definitely. As for the rest, the Vecna it looks to be new because that's his new design.
Right.
The Mind Flayer perhaps is new, but yeah, either way,
it looks like the MTG version of it, maybe.
Yes,
one that they did for Battle at Baldur's Gate, or the other one, maybe.
Yeah, so they've
some of them are new.
Some of them are new. The player character ones, I don't think are all. I think they look new. Certainly, the Dragonborn looks new. Okay. In fact, that Tiefling Rogue looks familiar. I've spent a lot of time looking at Wayne's art because I really like his style. It's kind of a edgy comic book style.
Right.
It's very evocative. His drawings are always very detailed. Lots and lots of texture on everything on the page. There's a lot of dense detail in his images. I've been a fan of his for a while. But yeah, it's interesting that they chose him because, as I say, he primarily does work now on the Pathfinder side of things rather than D&D, and I don't think I've seen any of his artwork in the upcoming revised books.
No.
So an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, they clearly have good taste, which is why they chose... Royal Mail chose Rob to run a D&D game for one of their teams.
That's true.
To sort of get an idea of D&D. So basically,
I actually am a little salty.
We blame Rob.
Yes, it's true. It's true. He influenced everything we know.
Yeah.
I'm actually a little salty about these stamps, but I actually can't get into why. I think it's a cool project and everything, but I'm a little salty about this whole thing overall. I'll tell you guys post. Nope, not at all. I'll tell you after the call, but I can't divulge here. Just know that hey, you do you, listener. If you want to buy the stamps and support some cool art and collect for the hobby, you do you. You have no judgment from me.
Cryptic, very cryptic. Yeah, so D&D stamps, everyone. Stamp collectors everywhere, I'm sure, will be snapping these up, and D&D fans, I've no doubt, will want some of these too. It comes in a nice set, like a sort of presentation set, as many of these things do. I've got an old one from the early 2000s, which was dinosaurs from the Natural History Museum, which came in a set. So yeah.
Nice. I do wonder with things like this in our modern age, where people sort of know about collecting stuff, do they ever really gain that much value when people will go out and buy them, and enough people will go out and buy them and then store them? Like, how long are you going to be waiting before these massively appreciate in value? You're going to be waiting a while.
Something that that's a very interesting point, and given my obsessive nerddom and collecting brain, I spend a lot of time looking at statues and collectible figures, comic books, obviously books like D&D, TRPG books, collector's editions of those. And it's a very interesting world we live in because of that very reason, because it is now like the pop culture is so prevalent now that what becomes valuable is quite difficult to pin down. You'll have weird things where comic books that in history, first appearances and things tend to pick up a lot of interest, especially if it's a brand new character in comic books. Collectible cards, collectible card games like Magic the Gathering and more specifically Lorcana for Disney, which is a license to print money. Rare cards of that are already pulling in stupid amounts of money.
Yep. I want to get Lorcana cards.
So it's I know there's a gold Mickey in one of the sets, which is pulling in daft amounts of money for a card.
Is it? Oh my God.
So it's a weird world we live in. Comic books ebb and flow. We have big crashes in their value, and then they climb all the way into stratospheric levels. Action figures, keeping them in boxes and things that never get remade, and the aftermarket prices of them get crazy. It is something to bear in mind if you are a collector with an eye to sell. Do your research. Do your research, because it's not the same as it was before, where if you've got a hidden Boba Fett action figure in your loft from the 70s, you're going to make a lot of money. But if you've got something that you've just bought in the last few years that you think is going to climb in value, do some research. Do some research.
Like comic book number ones used historically are a big thing, but now I don't know. I think that people keep them in such good condition in the hope that they are worth something down the line, that it almost means that
you can get them graded and slabbed. You can get them graded and slabbed and kept. But number ones are an amusing thing, because both Marvel and DC and other comic book companies are guilty of this. They produce an obscene amount of number ones these days. So
specifically for that reason, to get people to collect and try and resell and build some groundswell. Yeah.
Well,
you okay there, James? There's a whole lot of clattering in the back. Is everything good?
I'm just muting myself in and out around the noise.
Right. I'll move on. Speaking of collector's items, we've got one more piece here to discuss, and that is dice sets, D&D themed dice sets from Beadle and Grimm. We've talked about Beadle and Grimm before for their big special edition releases for the adventure modules from 5th edition, with all kinds of pretty maps and tokens and collectibles and all types of things inside them. These are actually the boxes are designed after classic Dungeons and Dragons from decades gone by. I'm looking at the Ravenloft one, which is the advanced D&D Ravenloft, not Curse of Strahd.
Why are you telling me this? I don't have more money.
Well, the boxes are very nice. James, I'll let you take this one.
They are very nice looking, but the price of them is apparently going to be around $178 for what is an ordinary set of dice. And there's a picture of the Ravenloft one here, and it looks like plain red dice. They don't look overly special in any way.
Right.
And on top of that, the only other things you get with it is like one D&D coin, it looks like, and 4 cards, like adventure cards with some information on about the original adventure. But that's $178 when you consider what the original, what their other products are priced at. So you can get the silver edition of Icewind Dale for £155, which includes the book, the DM screen, campaign maps, battle maps, in-world handouts, artifacts of the Chardlan Amulet, Arcane Brotherhood, and a plushie of the Yeti Tyke, encounter cards, bonus encounters, and other game aids, which is pieces of art, test scorecard, goat ball instructions, pre-generated characters. That's $150. So that's £20 less, and it just seems like you get so much more. I don't really understand how they're justifying. Like, if I had to choose between those two things, if I was like, well, JC, I can spend like $170 on something for you. Would you like a dice set and a kind of nice classic looking D&D box, or would you like this adventure,
the full set of the Icewind Dale,
all this stuff,
which includes everything? Of course, right? Yeah, I see what you mean.
I should just clarify that the 178 is for the set of 6. So just to let you know, it's not 178 each.
Just for the Ravenloft.
It's for the
whole. It is just 6 sets of dice with some pretty boxes and some coins. They're very nice. They are the dice.
Yeah, they're nice.
The image that they've shown of the dice doesn't do them any favors. They look like a very standard set of red dice, the Ravenloft ones. They don't look particularly.
They do.
Pretty.
There's also an oversized D20 in there. as well, which is slightly sort of mottled red.
Fun.
But it doesn't.
Right.
Honestly, I like, and I realize we are in conjunction with Roll Darkness in our podcast, but like the dice that Rob makes look nicer than these insanely priced dice, and they are a third of the price.
Yeah. Yeah,
they also
I think you're paying for the.
I mean,
insert Rolldark randoms advertisement here.
yeah. To be fair, even the randoms look nicer. But like I specifically meant the ones that like Rob handcrafts at home and is like the special.
Right, with the resin and
his resin dice.
I think you're paying for the pretty collector's box.
If you like the art, go and find the second edition module and buy that on eBay. Because the art's the same, you get the module, and then buy a cheap set of dice to go with it. You'll have saved
many of which will be very good, very good modules that you can extrapolate into 5th edition. They've got Ravenloft, they've got Temple of Elemental Evil, they've got Tomb of Horrors. It looks like so, yeah.
Well, I mean, I've got the second. I recently got from a friend of mine the second edition Monster Manual, Player's Handbook, and DM's Guide.
Ooh.
So.
Nice.
I can now run second edition adventures. I just, need to read the books rather than just leave them looking pretty somewhere, which is what I'm currently with them.
You need to pick them up and open them up, James.
They're all lovely and yellowed, the pages, because they're so old. But yes, it's quite nice to have them.
Yeah. Kind of crazy that some of the stuff is like news. 40 years. Ooh, I actually had a quick news item. Well, considering we'll come back to the unloved stepchild of recent D&D things, the one that's flown under the radar this whole time and that literally everyone's forgotten about. Quests from the Infinite Staircase has technically launched, which is the final publication for the 5th edition system before it hits the revised books and whatnot. It was a very subtle launch. It has been drowned out by all the videos that they've been doing for the different classes and features of the new Player's Handbook and the new DMG, etc. But it is out. It is available. I will probably be going and spending money right after this to go pick it up at my FLGS, my friendly local gaming store. And I've even read some initial reviews by a couple of people in the community that say they have rather enjoyed it and thought it's a decent upgrade of these older adventures into the 5th edition system. It includes, obviously, a great big old stat block index, and there's a handful of new magic items in there as well that were previously not in 5th edition. There's also, I'm looking it up right now, I don't have the stats for it, but I can tell you the different kinds of monsters that they've published within their creature appendix. So you have things like the android, pure and simple. Android. There's also the Froghemoth or Froghemoth, depending on how you say it, Elder. As if the Froghemoth wasn't already a scary enough freaking monster that is always fun to run. Now you have the Froghemoth Elder. There's the Gardener, sounds very mysterious. Horrid Plant. Granted, I think all plants in D&D are horrid if they're coming alive.
There's not enough living plant stat blocks, I feel like, in D&D.
Don't put that on.
No, we need more. We need more.
There's not a variety of them, is there? It's just all...
Shush, both of you.
I've said before, I've run in the Nentia Vale, which is the sort of default setting for 4th edition, and there's a lovely bit of sort of lore about what are they called? The needle
blights.
Blights, thank you. Yeah, the blights. And so, although my players, when I ran a 5th edition upgrade of a 4th edition module set there, although they've never faced them, I'm constantly having NPCs tell them to steer clear of the woods and stay away from the trees and stay away from any dense area of foliage because of this legend that a farmer gathered up these plants and they came alive and killed him and his friends and family and spread out across the land. And now they're everywhere, these living blights that exist throughout the uncivilized lands. And it's just this excellent little sort of old wives' nightmare fairy tale of make sure you go to bed or the blights will get you.
The blights will get you. Yeah, don't wander too far off the trail because the blights will find you. Right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Very cool. There's also a leprechaun stat block, which sounds exciting. And then just robots. It's just robots, combat robot, and worker robot. I am going to pick this up regardless because of my increasingly growing collection, but I hear it has been fun to run. And there is even sort of a thread that connects the adventures if you are so willing to run it in that way. So sorry, Quest from the Infinite Staircase, that you got so little love, but thank you for being you. And I'm sure you're wonderful.
It's a victim of
nobody knowing
timing,
you're there.
definitely.
Yeah,
Coming
it was
off the
bad.
back of Vecna into the revised editions, it just sort of squeezed in the middle there.
Right.
The clouds have just parted. The full moon is
Oh.
shining silver across the land, and the negative ninny werewolf is forming. The cynic in me wants to say, not being negative because I haven't read the module, but the cynic in me wants to shout out loud that I'm not surprised that this is getting a lot of good buzz because Wizards didn't have to really write anything for it.
Yep.
It was
I wasn't gonna say it.
It was
There
all
it is.
modules that already existed. All the lore was there. They just needed to upgrade it to 5th edition rule set.
5th edition.
I'm
sure a little writing went into some.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did. I feel a little dirty saying that, but I do feel there has been a downtick in quality over the years of 5th edition modules that many of which started really strong. We were talking before about Curse of Strahd, which is still to this day one of the most popular, if not the most popular 5th edition module, which was a really early one. That's not to say all of the early ones were good. I know that I know some of the very early ones were not
Tyranny
well
of
received.
Dragons was terrible.
Yeah, Tyranny of Dragons not popular.
Storm King's Thunder's not seen as well. It seems like it's seen as it needs a lot of work from the DM to.
It does need a lot of work from the DM.
Get going.
Yeah, it's a good concept. It was just poorly organized, and there was no real guidance as to how to get people through it. The way the book was laid out was too lore heavy. It was more of like a campaign setting for the Forgotten Realms with the adventures sparse throughout. So you had to sort of flip through the book a lot in order to make things happen. It wasn't very user friendly, but it was in concept a great adventure, and the premise of it is still a lot of fun. And the final boss has its issues, but there's a couple of interesting bosses that a lot of people have done their own things with. Anyway,
I don't know if they ever really found the best format. It'll be interesting to see what they settle on for the revised edition, because every time a new module was released, the format seemed different. How they laid the book out, which of course is sometimes necessary because some are great big sort of region-spanning adventures, whereas some are more centralized. But still, how the adventure is laid out, how the summary of the adventure is laid out, how the advancement is dealt with, how it was always different every time, and some of it was really great, and some of it was really loose and lacking, and it never really seemed like they settled on a style of layout.
No, they've never settled. But you want me to tell you which one actually did it best?
I would love to know which one you think is the best.
It's not going to be a popular choice. Take a guess. I'll let you guess. Of all the 5th edition published adventures, which do you think has the best structure, or at least you think that I think has the best structure? It's going to be an unpopular pick, but try it.
An unpopular pick. Shattered Obelisk?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Earlier or later?
Earlier. Damien, your guess?
I'm trying to think because I'm torn between saying one that I think has a good layout versus what I think you think has a good layout.
Which one is yours?
I know that you know that I know.
Yeah. I don't know. I personally think, although I think the adventure itself was too linear, I actually quite like how Descent into Avernus was laid out.
Okay. Good pick. Solid pick. What do you think mine is?
Yours.
What was your guess for that?
I'm just going to have to guess because I don't have a solid idea. Let's go with Let's pick it. You said unpopular. Let's go with.
To amend that, it's not exactly unpopular. It's not the likely choice. It's kind of flew under a radar and came at a weird time.
Okay, in that case, let's say Wild Beyond the Witchlight.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
The Wild Beyond the Witchlight actually, I think, has the best structure. And mostly, I will say this, it's mostly because it's a railroaded adventure.
Yeah.
There are, and I watched an interesting video essay on this once. There's nothing technically wrong with a railroad adventure. If it were on rails, that's actually slightly different.
Yes.
That means you are limited to player choice or you are limited in player choice and creativity. But the fact that the story has a through line that you're expected to follow isn't the worst thing. Plus, it does a decent job of expanding every area and still giving you a few options if you want to go explore something that you see in the distance or something that looks cool on the map. You have that opportunity. Not every location is mandatory. But all that being said, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, in terms of formatting, presentation, organization of the book itself, where the stats for things were, what belonged in the glossary and what didn't, all of that was actually really well done. The adventure itself is fine. It's fun. It's a little more Alice in Wonderland than I would have cared for my Feywild. I prefer more of the lore rich and heavy Feywild-esque stuff. But that being said, I think it has the strongest organization, and I haven't seen it since. No other module, no other adventure book has followed that path.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because Avernus, I said, was a fairly linear adventure, not railroaded like you say, but fairly linear, and it has a decent structure to it. It's easy to follow.
Right. I think the only thing that puts it above Descent into Avernus, and this is not a bad thing for Descent into Avernus, is that you get the choice as the DM to split, right? You go either the path of demons or the path of devils, which is fine and it's great, but then there ends up being a lot of cool content that you are going to naturally miss out on. Unless the DM does a lot of legwork to try and bring it back in. But Witchlight really doesn't have that branching path, and some people think that's much better. They prefer having options or replayability, if you will. But I think any adventure has replayability because you're playing presumably with different characters, which will act very differently. So that being said, I hated what they did with the spellcaster stat blocks, because that was the first adventure book that decided to use the new spellcasting system where they got rid of spell slots. They just told you how many times per day. Even spellcasters, like not just monsters, but wizards and sorcerers and warlocks, all just had per day things, right? Rather than actual spell slotted spells. Plus, they also got rid of alignments briefly. If anybody remembers that whole,
they did.
They were like, let's kill alignments totally, and then they brought it back immediately. We're like, okay, that didn't work. Let's try saying typically lawful evil, and we're like, yeah, we know it's typically. So, but other than that, it is still a fun adventure. I never really got to run it to its full fruition and completion, but I would love to. I started one, and sadly the group fell apart, as is the curse of D&D.
I've never run Witchlight. James, have you run Witchlight?
No, I never have. I was at one point looking at the Beadle and Grimm's Witchlight box set, which seems to have disappeared from their website. So maybe I'm wrong, and I was looking at something on Etsy instead.
Maybe.
It might have sold out because I know some of the things they do are highly limited. I'm pretty sure I did see one.
I thought.
I think it's gone now. I've just been looking to see if I could spot it because I knew it came with like tickets to the Witchlight Carnival and things like that. And it looked
very cool.
Yeah, there's like a video online for it. I see it.
Okay.
It is still available on their website. It is $500. Oh no, it's listed as sold out. Sorry, but it is $500. Yeah.
God damn.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Oh, they had the little weather vane token and everything. Honestly, nice. the carnival aspect of this. Here's my thing about Witchlight, and I know we're a little over time and we have some tales from the tables to get to, so I'll make it quick. As having run I would say probably the first fifth of the adventure, the carnival into the first area of the wild beyond the Witchlight. The carnival itself is a beautiful, excellent, fun experiment that sadly does not represent D&D or the rest of the adventure very well. So you need to go in with a group, and I'd say if you want to run this adventure, go with a pre-established group that you trust. Do not just throw it out there for randoms to jump in unless you are supremely confident that you're pulling from a good community, say the Rolldark community. That being said, it is because there's a lot of suspension of disbelief. There's no combat in the carnival, and honestly, you could go through the entire module with very light to little or no combat, which was one of their selling points in the very beginning. Although it's not fun that way. You want some combat. But it's still really cool, and it had some great stuff. It's very roleplay heavy, so get yourself a good group of role players and
nice
and get into it. Yeah. Oh, the plushie was great for the fairy dragon. I was looking at the Beetle and Grimm's Platinum Edition, and they have a plushie for a fairy dragon with this like French mustache. That's why.
That's what I remember seeing. That's why, and I think that's why it sold out as quickly.
I would have thought they would have had the plushie for the Displacer Beast, which is on the cover,
something.
but I guess they didn't. Yeah. Oh well.
It's going to irritate me, but yes, I think that's the main reason I wanted it.
Yeah. So anyway, with that out of the way, does that wrap up the news?
It does. Yeah, that was the last.
All right. Well, then we turn to some tales from the tables.
Absolutely.
Which
I have a couple. I have a couple. If anyone's happy for me to
regale
us. Please go ahead.
Okay, so I've had a fun old week of D&D this week with my two regular games, Odyssey of the Dragonlords on Monday and Vecna Eve of Ruin on a Tuesday. So Monday, Odyssey of the Dragonlords, I've said before, a very Greek mythology-inspired adventure, third party, but still very good. And it's their current quest is to find a ship, a trireme, a very grand, historically significant boat that is mysteriously sailing down a landlocked river, not in the ocean, and heads to a waterfalls that cannot be heard when it crashes to wherever it inevitably lands because it falls into the underworld. Yeah, very thematic. And while the module itself doesn't lead you this direction, it has a whole path to the secret inlet that the boat is located in. My players learned a little bit of lore about having seen it on the river and decided they were going to enact a whole plan to build a raft and travel across the river while it was sailing down at midnight and board it, which I thought was too fun an idea to try and steer them away from.
Yeah, exactly.
So I went with it and had the vessel sailing down the river at midnight, ready for them when they built their raft. And the ensuing chaos was a lot of fun because it was a case of getting to this huge trireme with these many, many, many oars, 20 plus oars either side, rowing and slapping the water as they're trying to get through them, and using bill hooks and grappling hooks to get up the side of the boat, which mysteriously has no resistance to them trying to climb it. Nobody tries to stop them, and they never see anybody on the deck. And as they're climbing up the side of the boat, the cliffhanger of our last session was that they see, which they'd seen on the map, the next part of the river is a dense and difficult portion of whitewater rapids, which a great vessel like this simply would not be. It would just run aground and be stuck.
Yeah.
That's when they noticed that the boat started sinking.
And submarine.
So the boat was sinking under the water while they were climbing up the side of it, and that's where we ended the session. So they opened the session, clung to the side of the boat as the boat was sinking, and rapidly the water level was rising. They were clambering up, getting onto the deck, trying to figure out if there's a way to command it, trying to command it themselves as the water was rising, and realized that they were on for the ride. There was no way they were stopping this vessel. And so they were given the choice. You either swim free of you've boarded it, but you either swim free of it now and try and find it another way, or you cling to the side of the boat and you hold on. And they did. They held on for dear life and spread across the deck as it submerged. So of course there was Constitution saving throws for holding their breath, exhaustion flying through for failures. I had them choose between taking exhaustion, later failures, taking further exhaustion, or taking damage, which was a significant portion of damage from swallowing water into their lungs and having to hold it there, which they had the choice to go with. And all the while, the boat was picking up speed underwater, so now they had to hold on for dear life because the water pressure of moving at high speed was a factor. And the only person a few of them took damage, a few of them took exhaustion, but the only person they nearly lost was their barbarian, a demigod barbarian, very Herculean, who literally grows in size when he rages. And he lost his grip on the vessel, flew backwards, and the vessel was going too fast for him to swim. And no human could swim at the speed it was moving. Right. So the other players were trying to release ropes out the back of it to try and allow him to grab onto, and he was just the victim of failure after failure after failure on these saving throws.
That sucks. You'd think the barbarian, being the athletically trained one, would have the best chance, right?
There's a fine line between giving them too many saving throws that it just doesn't seem like there is a threat, and not giving them enough saving throws to play rule of cool. And I think I found an all right balance. They were coming up with ideas to stop him. They all failed. One of them actually ended up using a great axe braced against the back of the boat for him to grab onto as he moved, but he can't see in the dark, and it is nighttime underwater. Ooh. So he hit the axe and took a bit of damage with a natural 1. And drifted off the back. He missed the rope that they released.
Oh my God.
And he simply said, "Can I take one more try? I'm going to go full rage. I'm going to grow and use my demigod strength to try and get to this boat by just swimming." Right. I said, "You can, but I'm setting the DC for this high.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to have to swim to the surface and try and find your friends later." Which I was furiously planning in my head how that would go.
Sure.
He rocked it. This was his saving throw. He landed it really high. I think he was just under 30, and I'd set it at 28. So he was just there. He was just there.
Well, he should have been raging from the start. They would have given him advantage on all these things,
so he swam. His rolls were so bad. I felt so bad for him. He swam at full speed, didn't catch up with the boat, but got enough to grab the rope, got pulled at the back of the vessel, and then the vessel exploded out the side of the waterfall and gently drifted down into an inlet. So at that point, he lost all momentum and completely fell into the water, taking another smack of damage, but he was raging, so he was fine. And they all sort of laying on the deck, gasping and wheezing, soaking wet, hardly being able to breathe, landed in this inlet with this ghost ship that they now had to explore and work out how on earth they're ever going to get it back to the ocean again.
How they're going to get back. Well, that's interesting. So it's not a submarine, it's a subtrireme.
Yeah, subtrireme.
I'm just clinging.
The other one, shorter, but was so funny in the moment. Vecna Eve of Ruin. No major spoilers here. They were in a big combat encounter in a dungeon. It's basically the first dungeon in the adventure. It was absolute chaos. But one of the funniest moments, the group was split into 2 separate areas of the dungeon, 2 separate rooms, fighting off different amounts of enemies, which was basically like them walking against the tide. It was just enemy after enemy appearing out of door after door after door. Spellcasters, monsters, you name it. And one of the groups in their little room barricaded a door and used a combination of spells to try and create the illusion that an explosion had rocked that room and the door was on fire, to try and discourage spellcasters from entering the room through that door.
That's excellent. Okay.
It was clever, yeah. So they had a booming illusory sound to make it sound like an explosion. They created illusory fire licking up the door to make it look like the fire was taking hold, and hoped that would be enough to dissuade any enemies. Meanwhile, in the other room, the wild magic sorcerer rolled on the wild magic table and got the fireball.
Oh no!
So while we had one group say, "Well, that explosion was really realistic. I'm sure they're gonna believe that we're all in danger and they won't enter this room." Meanwhile, the other half of their party made their own real explosion, which detonated around, I think, 4 of them, rocked them for hit points. Yeah, and we were rolling about laughing the idea that one group had created an illusory explosion, and the dice gods saw fit to say, "Well, your other group can have a real one."
Right. It's actually fascinating that we're running these games simultaneously, because I think I know what you're talking about. Is this second of what you would assume of the big fights in the dungeon so far? Like, so not in that main chamber, but a little bit north of it?
So It's not the main end chamber. That's their next session. This is a much smaller session with a more senior member of the enemy that they're facing there with a companion.
Gotcha.
Versus defending the first major encounter room, the spellcaster room, from the north part of the map where other things are entering from that direction.
Oh, okay. There's a lot entering from that north point. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Mine, I just had my Vecna game as well, and on Monday, and it was very similar in terms of them trying to get access through multiple rooms. So the way it's set up, and this is my critique of 5e dungeons in general. I'm sure D&D dungeons in general, because I'm sure it's not just 5e. But effectively, there are many rooms that have interconnected passageways up in this dungeon that are meant to be encountered one by one so that it's an easier time for the players, but it makes no sense in world that other neighbors in neighboring rooms wouldn't hear the sounds of combat and be drawn, especially considering there are some secret passageways that can help them get around. So when they entered one room and were like, oh, there's only a couple of enemies here, we'll be fine, they drew the attention of like 6 other enemies in the vicinity that started pinning them in. And because there's 7 players in my campaign plus a couple summons, so they have their player characters, and then there's a familiar and a fae and a artificer's steel defender. There's just a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
So they the hallways are very narrow. They're getting frustrated trying to move through each other. So one of them had the idea of trying to go back around, but that ended up taking forever for them to get back around into that area. This whole dungeon, I was like, guys, I promise from in the future, I'm going to have 10-foot wide hallways so you can go around each other instead of through each other.
I think that's part of the fun. My group have said these last few sessions that they are having so much fun with this encounter because of how hard it is, because I've played by the same philosophy. There is no sensible reason why triggering a fight in one of those rooms wouldn't draw the attention of other enemies. And in some cases, I've had them sort of post up and anticipate being infiltrated rather than actually just come running through. But in other cases, they just there's some big sort of monstrous creatures in one of those north rooms, which I think you changed. I had a cult member just stood at that door ready, and at the appropriate time when he saw somebody peer around the corner from another corridor, just opened the door and said fetch. And which was terrifying, but one of my players used wall of fire and filled an entire corridor with a wall of fire.
One of my players
which was really clever, really clever.
Yeah. That was in the previous encounter. Anyway, it's a complicated little dungeon, but it's fun. And the final room is going to be very interesting.
If you're willing to go balls to the wall and not do it as room by room, I would recommend it. If you know that your players are up for some danger, because it can be dangerous. If you know they're up for some danger, just throw it at them and just have the enemies wave after wave after wave. Because at their level, if they're clever and they've got some resources behind them, they can hack it. Because it seems like both of our groups have done, at least for now. They've taken unconscious players. They've had dangers, but they've even blown themselves up. But it's been resource taxing, but it has been a lot of fun to run it that way. And only you mentioned the secret passages. Literally, only the enemies have used the secret passages for me, apart from when my players have then subsequently used them later when they know they're there to just flank them and get the upper hand.
Yeah, I also have a sneaking suspicion from the way that certain people have been playing that someone has looked at a map of this. I'm not voicing it, but hey, if you guys are listening, don't cheat.
Yeah.
There was a room where someone rolled an investigation check in a very particular area of the room, and I was like, interesting that you did that. Interesting. What has indicated to you that there is a secret passage in this room so far? Literally nothing, but yeah, we'll see. Anyway, on that note, we're a little over time, I think. Unless, James, you have a quick Tales from the Table you want to share?
No, I don't this week. My mind has gone entirely blank, and I've not run a game this week, so
right.
I have nothing to draw from.
We'll have one
in the
for next
recent
week.
memory.
Yeah.
Yes,
and maybe Rob next week, maybe not.
Ooh,
We're not
but
sure.
Not me next week or the week after.
Oh no!
I think Rob did say not next week as well from his message.
You
so.
two guys.
We may have to. We might have to figure it out. Okay.
Carried it.
Might be a dark week. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yes, I'm on holiday. From
Mexico,
week.
right?
Mexico.
Enjoy and love Mexico.
Cool Aztec ruins.
Wait a second. No, next week. Is it next week? What's today? The 18th?
18th today.
I think we might be dark next week, guys, because I think I have a flight to catch.
All right.
You're coming to the UK as well.
I am. We can maybe figure out if we could reschedule it, but if not, we might be dark next week.
I could do Tuesday next week.
You'll see.
So maybe
we could do Tuesday or yeah.
I probably could. Yeah, I probably could do Tuesday too.
We should probably cut this out. Hey Rob, just
maybe
cut the end of
we'll figure it out.
The podcast out. Just let it go.
Cool. Well, either way. Right. Well, so I think that wraps us up. Bye from me.
Indeed. Yeah. Bye from me. Thanks, guys.
Thanks as always, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.